when you hear that music, you know it's time for the one, the only Bud Poliquin and our Brunch with Bud segment. We are Sans Boy Green today, but he will be back next week, I believe. Bud, welcome aboard. Happy Tuesday to you. Ready for another Brunch with Bud?
Good morning to you, Jimmy, and I am ready.
You are ready. Okay, well,
Yes,
there's
sir.
a lot to get into today.
There
No
is.
question
There
about
is.
it. It's been an interesting weekend, an interesting week in sports. We'll start it with the local, and then we'll push our way out. Syracuse Duke over the weekend. And, an ugly one for the Orange after that glorious win down in Death Valley for the first time in their history. Syracuse came home to face Duke, who came in at 2-2, but oddly was favored by 5.5 points. I was scratching my head, questioning Vegas on that one, but apparently I shouldn't have been. It should have been about 52.5 because Syracuse got the barn doors blown off them against Duke. Ricky Collins, we got to see him for pretty much an entire game with the injury to Steve Angeli. I didn't look awful. I don't know that he was the reason they lost the game, but it wasn't pretty either. So let's talk about it. Syracuse Duke. How surprised are you that the Dukies came in here and took it to Syracuse?
Well, like everybody in town, I was very surprised, and there's no surprise there. I don't think, in that I was in disbelief. Basically, you go down to Clemson, and admittedly, we're learning very quickly that Clemson is not Clemson anymore. But nevertheless, you went down the Death Valley against a team that needed to win, and you won fairly convincingly. So you're going to come home to a semi-sellout crowd in a building made for offense against a so-so team, an unremarkable team anyway, and you score 3 points. Now, anybody who saw that coming has got a crystal ball far clearer than mine. So yeah, I was very, very, very surprised. Surprised that they lost, but gobsmacked that they lost by 35 points.
Now, I don't know if you heard about this, but Ricky Collins apparently, after the game, gave his head coach, Fran Brown, a call and said, hey, I'd love to come down and meet you and go over some film immediately. I think this was Saturday night. It was over the weekend for sure. And apparently the two of them sat and watched the entire game film and broke it down together in an effort, I guess, for a young Ricky Collins to show, hey, I'm dedicated to this. I got your back. You've got mine. I think it was the quote, something along those lines. So does that impress you at all? A young man in college meeting with his coach essentially in the wee hours of the night saying, all right, we got this one wrong, but I want to make sure we get the next one right. Does that mean anything, or should it mean anything to the fans or to the future of Ricky Collins?
I don't like it. Okay. I think the coach just said, look, bury it, flush it, whatever term you want to use. Let's get rid of it. Let's talk in the morning. Well, go over game film. Let's do it tomorrow morning. Let's sleep this one off. Let's see how we feel in the morning. No need to do it through the night on Saturday. No need to deny either the coach or the player needed sleep.
Well, Fran Brown
like
didn't need a shower because he doesn't shower after losses.
Yeah.
I know you know all about that. He doesn't get washed, so he didn't have any place to go, I guess.
It's too performative for me.
Okay.
The player and the coach. No, the answer to your question is no, I'm not impressed. As a matter of fact, I'm a little bit turned off. And I think the coach should have been the mature one to say, hey, kid, go home, get some sleep. This isn't the end of the world. We'll look at it tomorrow. See you then. That's what he should have said.
Interesting. If I recall right, but you weren't thrilled with the running sprints after the game thing in front of the fans either. So again, this is a different scenario, but again, it leaks out there. It gets into the public, it was published in an article by Syracuse.com that this happened. So it got out there. So this, again, is this, window dressing, dare I say, to kind of say, look at what we're doing. Look at how hard we're working. And is it believable in some way, I guess?
Again, it's a little performative. What I did like about Fran Brown is that he said, and I don't know football enough to know if he's telling the truth or whether he was just, taking one for the club. But when he said, I'm being outcoached, we're losing because I'm being outcoached. I thought that was pretty, I bought that. That one I bought. The sprints, the kids staying up at night with the coach watching game film, but the coach telling the world, guess what? I'm being outcoached. I thought that was pretty nice, pretty interesting, and I would give him a thumbs up for that one, and thumbs like this or down for the other things.
Okay, menza or down. All right. Well, look, I want to spend a little bit of time talking baseball with you.
One more before we lose SU.
Yeah.
I haven't pulled off my concept, my thought at all that this is a tough schedule. But I'm looking at the schedule going ahead with Clemson now being unmasked and with Syracuse being at 3-2. These next 3 weeks are probably the season.
Yep.
They got at SMU, they're playing, then they come home to Pittsburgh, then they go to Georgia Tech. Because after that, the games I think are pretty well established. You're going to beat North Carolina, I believe, at home. You're going to lose at Miami and Notre Dame, I believe, on the road, and you're going to beat BC at home. So I think the last 4 games are fairly preordained. It's the next 3 at SMU versus Pitt at Georgia Tech. What can you do these 3
Yeah.
games? I think will say where this season is going. The last 4 games, I don't know if there's any drama in the last 4 games. These 3 games coming up, there's where the drama is.
Okay. I don't disagree. I agree with you on that. All right. Let's shift gears and talk about the baseball playoffs. But I've been on suicide watch with my Mets collapsing. Unbelievable that they can't win either of the last 2 games of the regular season against the Miami Marlins team that just isn't very good, with all that money on the payroll, with all those superstars. But we know the story. It's been pitching for the Mets, and they just the starting pitcher has just literally collapsed. This is a rotation that at one point in the year was almost the best in baseball from an ERA standpoint, from what they were putting up numbers-wise. And, man, it was an epic collapse in the second half, so much so that the Mets are literally rolling out rookies as their best pitchers, guys that had barely pitched in the majors at all. We got to see them all right here in Central New York for the Syracuse Mets. Before we knew it, whoa, they're pitching in meaningful games in September for the New York Mets. McClain, arguably down the stretch, might have been their best pitcher, sans that one good performance in the final week by Clay Holmes. That was the one bright spot of the whole thing. Holmes coming back out of the bullpen on a pitch count, and he tosses a gem for 6 innings. And other than that, I mean, just a hurting, terrible situation. And I don't know, is it back to the drawing board for the Mets before we start talking about the playoffs? Is it back to the drawing board?
I don't know about that, but I do know this. And if you were to list the top 20 players in baseball, I think somewhere in the top 20, you're going to find Soto, Lindor, and Alonso. I think we can agree on that.
Yes.
And when you have 3, in my estimation, 3 of the top 20 players in baseball batting, back to back to back, and you do not make the playoffs, especially when all 3 of them had pretty good seasons, it is what everybody says, an epic collapse. But they were not alone. The Mets were not alone. The Detroit Tigers were more of an epic collapse than the Mets, and they survived by 1 game to make it in as the wild card. The Houston Astros were up by 7 games in, I think, August, and they fell behind by they were 3 games out at the end of the season from first place. So they gave away 10 games in 6 weeks or so. So I'm not sure, and I've just teased this idea. Have we ever seen 3 collapses like that in a single season? The Mets, the Tigers, the Astros.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty remarkable. And people say, well, the Tigers are in. Yeah, the Tigers are in.
Yeah.
But they collapsed anyway. They were up by 15 and a half games.
It looked like the Mets at one point were the best team in baseball. The Tigers at one point were handily the best team in baseball. Right. And neither of them, one doesn't make it and one barely makes it in the last
One barely
week.
makes it.
Wow.
And so you have these 3 collapses, and then you have the Guardians, who had, I think historically I read, it is the greatest comeback in baseball history. So anyway, going to the Mets specifically, I don't know. You'd have to think this is freaky. It looks like Alonso is running out of town. It looks like he's saying, I don't want back.
I know. It does sound that way, doesn't it? He's definitely said he definitely is going to explore free agency, which is a clear indication, I'm getting out of here.
That's right.
Yeah.
It seemed like a declaration, I'm gone, for sure. But if he stays, Lindor's in his prime, Soto's in his prime. You get those guys healthy again on the mound. I don't think anything's bleak for the Mets. I think this is misery. This is an humiliation. I'm not one to say going forward you got to tear it up or you got to say, oh, woe is us. I think they'll be back next year, assuming good health.
Yeah. I thought they need to spend money on pitching this year. I know they spent the biggest money on the biggest guy in Juan Soto, and I like that acquisition, but they still needed to spend some money on pitching, and I just think they try to cut corners, and you can't cut corners with pitching staffs. It just doesn't work. So we'll see. Regroup for next year, that's for sure. All right, let's talk about the baseball playoffs because they are decided, Bud, and we're headed into the wild card round with the Yankees in the wild card, but they are, and they're taking on the Red Sox, so that ought to be a tremendous matchup. And we've got the Tigers and the Guardians. So let's talk about the two wild card matchups first in the American League. Give me your thoughts on those teams, and who do you see coming out of those series?
I think Cleveland did everything it's going to do this year by getting where they've gotten. So I think Detroit should win that. I think they're the better team. Although Cleveland won the division, so the numbers say Cleveland's the better team. I mean, performance is performance, and they're the better team. I don't think so. I think the Tigers are going to beat the Indians, even though all 3 games are in Cleveland. Boston, New York. Does anybody really know that one? I mean, if you're a fan of one or the other, you have hope, you have belief, but you have knowledge of that one. Come on, that is a coin toss to end all coin tosses. And I'm not so sure the Yankees being at home is going to really prove too daunting an obstacle for the Red Sox. I don't want to say epic because neither team won the division, so how epic can it be? And it is only 3 games. But this could be a massively interesting 3 games. But one team has Judge and the other team doesn't. So I would say that the Yankees are going to win that series. So I like the Yankees and the Tigers moving forward.
All right, let's talk about the NL side of things. Man, hard to believe the Dodgers are in the wild card. The Dodgers could be eliminated in 2 games and be sent home with all the money that they've spent. I mean, if you want to say everything the Mets have done, the Dodgers have then done that, and it's seemingly even more. All the talent in the world. Do you see any way that the Reds find a way to get past the Dodgers?
No, I think that's a 2-game sweep by the Dodgers. And I mean, come on, this guy Ohtani is. I don't know what words. Do you have any words for this guy? I'll ask you. How do you describe this guy? He had 55 home runs. He was maybe the best pitcher on the team over the last 4, 5, 6 appearances. He scored 140 runs or whatever he scored. He's the best base runner in baseball. He's the most formidable. He may not be the best hitter. Judge is probably that, but he's the scariest dude up there. When he gets on the bases, he gets around the bases. Mm-hmm. And when he feels like it or when they call upon him, he'll go up there and dominate on the mound. This guy is phenomenal. Captain Obvious there, I know. But because he's on the one team and the Reds don't have him, the Dodgers are going to win
enough to tip the scales.
2 games.
I mean, if I had a word to describe him, I would say Ruthian. That he resembles Babe Ruth in terms of what Ruth did. But Ruth was, to my knowledge, not a great base runner. I mean, he's a rather portly fellow. So I don't know that he ran the bases all that well back in those days. With this guy, you're right. I mean, he gets on the bases and he can wreak havoc. He's a menace on the mound, throwing nearly 100 miles an hour. He's a remarkable player. He's a remarkable talent. And I think baseball in America is lucky to have him because he could be playing overseas and we might never have seen him. He might have been the next Sadahara O and beyond over there in Japan. But he came here and he's brought his talents here. And we're going to get prime, Shohei Ohtani in American baseball. And I think that is good for American baseball, in all honesty.
And I know we're always prisoners of the moment in sports, and I may be this, but if Ohtani stays healthy, there's going to be no discussion who the best player ever was. It won't be Babe Ruth. I mean, Babe Ruth did what he did, and it was unbelievable, and he was better than everybody, and blah, 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 and I get that. But look what he was doing it against. He was doing it against – did anybody throw – and again, as I've said before, I'm a believer in evolution. The competition against which Ohtani is playing is vastly superior than the competition against which Babe Ruth played. And the idea that Babe Ruth would be able to do what he did then against these bullpens, this idea that you face 2, 3, 4 pitchers a game, that you're facing 100 miles an hour from probably more pitchers that, I don't want to overstate. He's facing fastballs he never saw. He's facing athletes he never could comprehend. And he did it. Ohtani's the guy. You say he's Ruthian. No, let's call Ruth Ohtanian rather than Ohtani Ruthian. So anyway, that makes the Dodgers a clear favorite over the Reds.
All right, fair enough. And then the final matchup in the National League, we've got the Padres and the Cubs, winner to take on the top-seeded Brewers. Who do you like in that series?
This is
Tough series, right?
semi.
Tough
This
series.
is semi Boston, New York. Semi in that
Yep.
it doesn't have the rivalries for sure and all that. It doesn't have the passion. I get all that stuff, but I'll tell you what. Wow, I'm gonna go the Padres. I'm gonna go the Padres. They just have a tremendous talent, and I just don't. The Padres. I think are the better team. I'm going to pick the better team. I got the Padres and the Dodgers, and that becomes a really big series. That has passion, at least on the San Diego side of it. I think that would be great for baseball. Seeing Otani against the Padres in a best of seven, that would be awesome.
Yeah, it would, no doubt, no doubt. And just not to move too quickly, too far ahead, we'll have weeks to talk about this, Bud. But just if you could plot a World Series right now, obviously the other teams, the Mariners and the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are the 1 seed, Mariners the 2 in the AL, Brewers the 1 seed, the Phillies the 2 seed in the NL. If you could, before the playoffs start here, put together a World Series, who are you as a betting man putting in that World Series?
Well, I wouldn't bet because you crazy people are nuts to bet on baseball. Okay, that's number one. So I wouldn't bet, but I'd bet a hamburger. I'd buy you lunch.
Okay, for a hamburger, who's in
Okay,
the World Series before it even starts?
okay, for lunch I'm going to take the Mariners
Okay.
in the American League, and for that same hamburger, I don't know how you pick against the Dodgers. Mariners versus Dodgers.
We'll get a Titanic series, theoretically, if the Dodgers do sweep the Reds, as you predict. They will play the Phillies. That will be a good series for sure in the National League. All right, that's your pre-thing. Well, you can change it later down the road, but I just want to see, before we go in, who you see going in. But you're right, baseball is incredibly difficult to predict. All right, today's broadcast, brought to you by our friends at Cam's Pizzeria, where it's always love at first slice. Let's just take 30 seconds, learn a little bit more about our friends from Cam's.
When you think of Cam's Pizzeria, think about two of your favorites, their zesty buffalo chicken wing pizza or their tasty chicken bacon ranch. Over 16 specialty pizzas made fresh daily with the best ingredients. Indulge in their homemade calzones, subs, wraps, salads, and their famous cannolis for dessert. They're all made with love just for you. Order online for 10% off at camspizza.com. Locations in Camillus and Oswego. Cam's Pizzeria. It's love at first slice.
All right, back. It's Brunch with Bud Poliquin at MC Show Digital. That's our YouTube channel. Please click the subscribe button. We'd love for you to do that. And also hit the thumbs up and like our videos. It's always good when you do that. Exposes us to even more people. We're giving away a golf club, Bud, to our one of our first 500 subscribers. So we're closing in the direction of that number. I don't know if you've seen the club. I mentioned it to you, but here it is. A Cleveland Highbore XL. Donated by our friends at Play It Again Sports. Look, still in the wrapper, baby. Has not been hit. This is a beauty. It adjusts from 9 degrees of loft all the way up to 12. You like to go in low, Bud? You like the low bearing flight, or you like to put it in the sky? I always remember you being kind of a low ball hitter. I think you'd like it at 9 degrees there, huh?
I was a George Brett hitter, right over the third base bag, 8 feet off the ground.
Down the line.
So I was a line drive guy.
Yep. So you're 9 degrees. We'll put you on 9 and
Yes,
get that thing to slightly draw position, and bingo, right over the third base line and into the left field corner for a little double, maybe stretch it into a triple if that guy's got a bad arm or he plays a bad off the carom, that kind of thing. Very nice.
If you don't mind, I'd rather hit in the gaps. Okay. I don't want to go down the foul line. That's in the woods. I don't want to go in the woods. I'll hit the gapper. Left field, left center to right center.
All right, so we got a little baseball out of the way. Let's talk a little bit of football. Hard to believe, Bud, but it's always nice when you can be talking about a win for one of the New York teams outside of the Bills, and that is the New York Football Giants, who Jackson Dart got in there. And a lot of people thought, oh, Brian Dable's crazy, putting him in against the Chargers. That team has been red hot. They came in 3-0. They're just going to maul him. This is going to be bad. They got the Saints next week. Wait on the kid. Well, the Giants didn't, maybe partially because jobs are on the line at this particular point. But whatever the reason, the kid was in there, and the kid looked fantastic. The defense played a little bit up to its billing as well. It's preseason billing, and suddenly the Giants get themselves a win against a real quality opponent. And now they've got an easy one coming up theoretically in New Orleans, so maybe they can get to 2-3 and start to turn this into something respectable coming off the horrible 0-3 start. But what were your impressions of the youngster? He's flashy. He's confident. He wears the gold chain, Bud. I mean, he's got some swagger, this kid. Is he right for New York? And do you see him being a success story, even just with one glancing look here through a singular NFL game?
Well, I was not on board at all. If you remember last week, we talked about this, and I thought you got to stay with Russell Wilson. You signed him. You signed him to be a tutor, a mentor to the kid. You signed him because he had the experience. I don't know why you signed him if you're not going to play him. So unless he completely falls apart, and I don't know that he completely fell apart, but I'm not as critical maybe as the next person.
Hmm.
So I can't say that it's a decision I applauded, but I've got to be smart enough to see that 0-3 versus 1-0. I mean, the proof is in the proverbial pudding, right? I mean, the
Hmm.
kid went out there and the team couldn't win with Russell Wilson. The team has won with the kid. So what do I think? I think 1-0 is pretty good, and I'm pretty sure, or I feel confident they could go to 2-0 with the kid, which makes it harder to defend my belief through games 1, 2, and 3 that I wouldn't make this move just yet.
Yeah.
I'm still surprised why you spend the money and the time and the effort of bringing Russell Wilson in if you're going to cut him loose after 3 games. So what do I think? I think, wow, like everybody else, that's pretty good. I don't need such amount of what people, as you just said, call swagger.
Hmm.
I don't know if I need that out of too many people, but particularly not a rookie. And so that doesn't do much for me. What does it for me is you're 1-0 against, and you beat a pretty good team. So I say I eat a little crow, just a little at this point, just a little. But because maybe it still is too soon. But right now, who am I to say it's not a good decision? They're 1-0.
Listen, wins are not easy to get in the NFL. You got to earn them. So, any win is a good win. And when you get it against a quality opponent, well, that makes it just that much sweeter. Bud, last topic for us today is the Ryder Cup. A lot of layers to this. Golf played over this past weekend at Bethpage Black in good old Long Island, New York City crowd there. We knew it was probably going to be raucous because it's all the USA and the Euros and a very, USA chanting kind of world. And we know the New Yorkers can get, they can get a little raw. And they did, apparently crossing a line a little bit with Rory McIlroy and several other European players where perhaps some attacks on families were going on from the crowd and extra security had to be brought out. And there were a couple of, Rory having to stop and move away from a putt because they wouldn't quiet down at all, even with the American players asking them to turn it down. They didn't care. Obviously, it was a rough first couple of days for the American team and then a complete flip on the final day. And they nearly had the most epic comeback of all. I mean, if they had somehow pulled that off, that would have been incredible. They didn't. Europe had a tremendously large lead and only won a single match in singles. Only won one match and then halved a few matches, but they only needed a few points, luckily, because they were so far ahead. But, man, the Americans almost pulled off the incredible comeback. But what do you make of the whole Ryder Cup thing? Do you even like the spectacle of it? Do you like the Ryder Cup itself? And should they never have it in New York again after all the trouble that it seemed to be coming from the crowd in the direction of the players in this game that demands kind of respect and a kind of a decorum, and apparently there wasn't much decorum there.
I'm going to stay away from the golf part of it for the moment.
Okay.
Because I think, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but I thought that the New York crowd disgraced itself and embarrassed the country. And I'm not I don't forgive as easily the idea that, well, it's a raucous crowd, and that's the way the New Yorkers are and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point, you just have to conduct yourself with more dignity. You could be passionate, you could be cheering and all, but really, I don't know how anybody could defend it. The most raucous New Yorker, and you're a New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get crazy or say I was ashamed to be an American, that kind of thing. But I'm not shy about saying that we, as Americans, I think we embarrassed ourselves. And I thought what those fans did was completely out of line. Look, folks, this is my confession. Ask Lerch. When I'm on a golf course, I've said some words. I know all the words. I've said all the words, but I know there's a thing called time and place. And I just don't think that sitting in the grandstands using that kind of language and everybody has to listen to your language,
Yeah, it's true.
even if they don't like that language, even if they don't use that language. Well, too bad, man. I want to yell this and I'm gonna.
No question. When
Very
I have
poor
taken
form.
my,
Poor form.
just again, as a native New Yorker, when I have taken my son to games in New York,
There you go.
and when he was younger, when he was, 8 and 10 and 12 years old, because I'm a Met fan, I'd go down for Met games regularly during the summer. Sometimes I would be like, what is this guy thinking? I mean, I got a 12-year-old boy here, and this guy's just dropping F-bombs every other word. I'm like, can we have a little decorum here? I mean, we got families sitting in this section too, and people just drunk out of their minds, just, speaking gibberish. It's like, let's go over here, son. Let's see if we can sit in another section. And some of the ballparks, I don't know if they do it at Citi Field or not, but some of the ballparks now have family sections. So
I know.
at least
That's
which is so ridiculous that you have to be put in your own section to avoid the riffraff of the rest of the stadium. It's like, what does the rest of the stadium get? The people that are the trouble get put in their lousy section, stick them down the left field line or something, and give the people who are there for the entertainment of the sport the better seats rather than the other way around, which is the way it usually goes.
Well, it's a horrible commentary that you need a family section.
Mm-hmm.
And also the family section, that's like having a no smoking section on an airplane in the old days. Everybody smelled your smoke no matter where you were.
Yeah, no question.
And no matter where you're at in the family section, you can hear all the F-bombs from all around you anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think that the American players should have been far more demonstrative. You may remember, and I think you will, when some idiot at the Carrier Dome threw a piece of fruit at the backboard when Patrick Ewing
I do remember that incident.
was on the floor.
Yes, right.
And I believe that Thompson pulled his team off the floor, which he should have done.
Right.
And I know that Boeheim took the microphone and said, knock it off.
Mm-hmm.
You do that again, I'm going to ask the referee to give us a technical. If he doesn't give us a technical, I'm going to tell him to give us a technical. And Boeheim took control of the building. And, Jim and I, had some good moments together, some bad moments, but that was a very proud moment for me that he understood. Now, I think he should have done it more often, frankly, but it showed me, at least on that one occasion, he understood this is a horrible thing that's going on here, and I can control this, and he did.
Yeah.
Thompson helped, of course. The American players should have absolutely done more than they did, because I think the American players could have controlled that crowd by just basically saying, knock it off, or even get down the mic and say, I'll tell you what, if you don't stop it,
play if this doesn't happen, and we'll just empty the stands out. I know. I mean, people think, I paid my money, I have a right to do whatever I want. Do you really in a sporting event? Do you really? I don't want to compare this event to Augusta and the Masters because that's just such a different environment and a different type of tournament. And we're going to get this patriotic thing, and it is kind of war, dare I say, us against them. There is that. And that's what makes the Ryder Cup actually unique. It makes it more of a raucous fan experience, which is cool. But there is still decorum within raucousness. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And I think you agree with me.
And I'll tell you what, I absolutely agree. This thing is different. And I'm not telling people, hey, hush, be like, Augusta, I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying, I am saying what we said.
Yeah.
And I wonder
if the tickets weren't so insanely expensive, I would have been there. So because I wanted to experience golf from a different, fan perspective, but not with all that riffraff going on. That would have made me uncomfortable. Sure.
I'm going to ask you a question. If Scotty Scheffler, as a name,
mm-hmm.
picked up a microphone and said, listen, you're either going to knock this off or I'm gonna four-putt the next hole, and I'm gonna give away points. We may lose the Cup Ryder. I'm willing to lose the Ryder Cup to straighten you folks out. I'll get the yips on the greens from here on out and lose this match to Rory if you don't calm down. Now I'm asking you, Lerch, if he said that, what would you have said? Is he going too far? Is he being too dramatic? Or would that have told the crowd, I mean business? Shut up. Cheer all you want. I'm not saying shut up. Stop with the language. Stop with the profanity. And stop yelling stupid stuff at the family members of our European guests. Yeah. And if you don't, I'm going to get the yips. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would use that exact example of I'm going to get the yips, or I'm going to four-putt the next green, and I'm going to do something detrimental to the team. I think the better statement would just be, if you folks can't have a certain decorum, we understand and we love your enthusiasm, but if you can't have a particular decorum okay, to respect those out here playing, all of us, and to respect those around you in the crowd. If you can't do that respectfully, then we'll go into the clubhouse and we'll wait until you're ready. Just something along those lines to just really, because all you need is the crowd, essentially somebody to get the people in the crowd who aren't doing it to get after the few people that are, because it's always just a few. All right. And the mob will always rule over the few. So you need the mob to attack the few and say, hey, buddy, knock it off, And once you're with the pack, okay, then it all moves in the right direction and you can quell, dare I say, a riot of sorts. So that's probably the way I would do it. I don't know that, hitting bad shots is what I would want to say. I know he's probably not going to do it, but I just don't like that whole thought of it. But I know where you're going with it, and that's my point. Is just listen, we'll just stop play if this is if this is going to continue. You can sit out here and look at an empty green until you knock it off. I mean, attacking someone's family and using profanity there's no place for it. We're in a competition here. You can root for us all you want, but let's not denigrate those that are performing on the other side. That's all.
And maybe I'm a little, I had honestly, that was just off the top of my head. I have not said, I can't wait to talk to Lerch Tuesday morning. This is going to be great. And so I'm going to say, but, okay, and that might have been a little performative on my part, a little dramatic, but I do believe that these athletes have more power than they think they have.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Or they're reluctant to use. And the athletes can be a beacon for society. This is how we conduct ourselves. Follow our lead because you admire us, but more importantly, if you don't follow our lead and clean up your act, then that's right. We're not coming out after halftime or something.
Yeah.
You do that once or twice or whatever, and the fans are going to say, okay, we've crossed the line, get back on the right side of the line.
Hopefully,
I would correct side of the line.
I would think you're right. I think the players might be just scared that they're going to fail. And then if they fail, then what? Now they're getting booed and, now it turns into something even crazier. That's probably the fear of the player. Not that they should fear that because I think, as you said, they have more control than they really probably know that they do.
I'll tell you what, nobody booed Boeheim that night when he said,
I know. So you're right. Needs to be the right person, but I do agree with you that the players have more power than they really think they do. Anything on the golf? I mean, were you blown away by Europe's?
The golf.
Yeah, the golf. Were you blown away by Europe's first 2 days that they just literally blew the doors off? Were you blown away by America's attempted comeback, which nearly came all the way back and losing only one match in match play on a Sunday? And if not for a few halves that could have gone the other way, the clutch putts that they made, almost every match went to the final hole, which was remarkable. And there's a lot of good stuff that actually happened on Sunday to the American team, considering all the bad stuff that happened on Thursday and Friday.
Okay. Very impressed with the Europeans on day 1 and 2. Very impressed with Americans on day 3. Here's what I'm going to say that you will not believe. All right.
Okay.
I've always said to you, people say, oh boy, such and such team has to win 4 games in a row, to get into the playoffs or whatever. And I say they do not. They have to win one game 4 times. And show me a team anywhere that can't win one game 4 times. And so when they woke up on Sunday, I was not predicting what happened. But I'm thinking they don't have to go 10-0 or 12-0 or whatever the thing is.
Right.
They don't. Just each guy has to win his match or have it or, whatever. Each guy has to step up. They're all pros. They're all the best in the world. Why can't this individual do his job and that individual do his job right on down the line? So was I surprised? Well, yeah. But was I really surprised? No. Because if I'm playing you and Smith is playing Jones and Patterson is playing Collins and we're all in different holes, why can't I beat you? And why can't Smith beat Jones? And why can't Patterson beat Collins? The answer is there's no connective tissue here. Of course they all could have won. It's never going to happen probably, but it could. And if you wait long enough, whatever can happen is likely going to happen. So there's the philosopher in me. I was not staggered that the Americans came back, but it's not like anything I predicted.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
All right,
a lot more time talking about that bad crowd than we did that Ryder Cup, but
But see, now whose fault is that? Now people say, well, Poliquin's an idiot. He should talk more golf. But the golfers, the people made me talk about what they did more than what the Americans did. And guess what? The balance there, I'm not too far off the consensus. I think there's a lot more. Well, I don't know if a lot. There's an awful lot of chatter that was about how bad the fans were. That was in competition with how good the Americans were on Sunday. That I think we can agree on.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, there it is. Another Brunch with Bud here on a Tuesday. We'll see you again next week, Bud.
Yes, sir. Can't wait.